When we talk about BTS, we're talking about 7 men who went from sharing a single dorm room in Seoul to literally owning the skies. But here's what most fans don't realize. Private jets aren't just about luxury. They're about necessity, privacy, and sometimes survival in a world where every airport becomes a battlefield of screaming fans and flashing cameras. So which member has been spotted boarding those sleek, multi-million-dollar aircraft the most? Is it the one you'd expect, the quiet introvert escaping the chaos, or the social butterfly jetting off to fashion weeks across the globe? Could the member ranked number 1 actually surprise you so much that it rewrites everything you thought you knew about who lives the most lavish lifestyle in BTS? And what about the ones who prefer commercial flights? Does that make them humble or just smarter with their money? Before you lock in your guesses, ask yourself this. Do you really know what happens when BTS steps off the stage and into the world of private aviation, exclusive airstrips, and VIP terminals that most people will never even see in their lifetime? Buckle up, because this list is about to take you 30,000 feet into the air. And trust me, the view from up here is nothing like you imagined. Let's get into it. Number 7. Kim Taehyung, the silent traveler who moves like a ghost. You'd think the man who literally gets called the most handsome face in the world would be the one flexing private jets left and right, but that's exactly where Taehyung surprises everyone. Kim Taehyung, or V as the world knows him, lands at number 7 on this list, not because he doesn't have the money or the connections. Trust me, this man is best friends with some of the wealthiest actors and celebrities in South Korea. But because Taehyung has always been the kind of person who moves in silence. When he does fly private, it's almost never for the cameras, and that's what makes every single sighting feel like discovering a rare artifact. Let's rewind to some of the moments that actually put him on the radar. Back during BTS's peak touring years between 2018 and 2019, there were a handful of occasions where Taehyung was spotted at private terminals in Incheon and Gimpo, sometimes alone, sometimes with the group when Big Hit arranged charter flights for security reasons during the Love Yourself and Speak Yourself world tours. Those weren't personal private jets per se, but chartered flights arranged specifically because airport mobs had gotten so dangerous that regular commercial departures became a genuine safety hazard. Remember that iconic moment at LAX where fans literally broke through security barriers? That's the kind of chaos that pushed the company to start booking private aviation more frequently. But here's where it gets interesting on a personal level. After BTS announced their hiatus in 2022 and members started pursuing solo activities, Taehyung was photographed at a private jet terminal in Paris during Fashion Week, looking like he stepped straight out of a Celine campaign, which, by the way, he literally was the global ambassador for. The photos went absolutely viral because he was dressed head to toe in designer, walking across the tarmac with that effortless cool that only Taehyung can pull off. No entourage, no massive security detail, just him and maybe one manager. That's Taehyung's style. He doesn't announce, he just appears and disappears like smoke. There was also that moment in late 2023 when eagle-eyed fans tracked flight patterns and spotted what they believed was a private charter leaving Seoul for Japan around the same time Taehyung was rumored to be working on solo music content there. Now, was it confirmed? Not officially. But the timing, the private terminal sightings, and the social media posts that followed painted a pretty convincing picture. What's fascinating about Taehyung is that even when he does fly private, he keeps it incredibly low-key. You won't find him posting stories from inside the cabin or flashing the interior like some celebrities do. He treats private aviation the way he treats most things in his life, as a tool, not a trophy. And honestly, that's kind of refreshing in an era where flexing wealth has become its own genre of content. His close friendship with the Wooga Squad, which includes actors Park Se-yoon, Choi Woo-shik, and Park Hyum-shik, has connected him to circles where private travel is just the norm, not the exception.
When you're rolling with A-list Korean actors who are shooting films across Asia and attending international premieres, private flights become less of a luxury and more of a logistics solution. Taehyung fits into that world seamlessly, but he never makes it the headline. That's why he sits at number 7. Not because he's the least luxurious member of BTS, far from it, but because his private jet moments are rare, understated, and almost always shrouded in mystery. And if you know anything about Taehyung, you know that mystery is his entire brand. He gives you just enough to keep you curious, but never enough to fully satisfy that curiosity. So if number 7 already has this level of intrigue, can you even imagine what's waiting higher up on this list? Which member do you think turned private jet travel into an actual lifestyle? Stay locked in because the next name might catch you completely off guard.
Number 6. Jungkook, the golden maknae who learned to fly above the chaos. If there's one member of BTS whose relationship with airports could be described as an absolute war zone, it's Jungkook. This man doesn't just walk through terminals, he survives them. And that right there is the biggest reason why private jet sightings involving the golden maknae started increasing dramatically from 2019 onward. Let's be brutally honest here. Jungkook is arguably the most mobbed idol in the history of K-pop. We're not exaggerating. There are actual compilations on YouTube with millions of views showing the sheer pandemonium that erupts every single time this man steps foot in an airport. We're talking hundreds, sometimes thousands of fans pressing against barriers, security guards being physically overwhelmed, other passengers getting caught in the crossfire, and Jungkook himself having to navigate through it all with a poker face while his personal space gets reduced to literally zero. It got so bad that there were multiple incidents at Incheon International Airport where airline staff had to create emergency corridors just to get him to his gate safely. One particular incident in 2019, right in the middle of the Map of the Seoul era, saw fans stationed near private aviation terminals at airports like Van Nuys in Los Angeles, Teterboro near New York, and Luton near London occasionally captured photos and videos of BTS members, including Jungkook, boarding or exiting smaller private aircraft. These weren't G5s or Boeing business jets. Most were mid-range charters, the kind that seat 8 to 12 people comfortably, perfect for moving a small group plus managers and security quickly and quietly. But the real shift came during Jungkook's solo era. When he released his solo album Golden in late 2023, Jungkook's schedule became genuinely insane. He was bouncing between Seoul, New York, and Los Angeles for recordings, music video shoots, and promotional appearances at a pace that would make even seasoned business travelers dizzy. During this period, multiple fan accounts and airport tracking pages reported Jungkook using private terminals at Gimpo and Incheon, avoiding the main passenger areas entirely. One viral moment came when a fan photographer captured what appeared to be Jungkook's vehicle entering the VIP private aviation gate at Incheon, a facility typically used by diplomats, corporate executives, and ultra-high net worth individuals. The photo spread across Twitter like wildfire, racking up hundreds of thousands of likes and igniting debates about whether Jungkook was chartering his own flights or whether Hybe was footing the bill for security reasons. And honestly, it's probably a mix of both. Here's something most casual fans don't realize. Private jet travel for someone at Jungkook's level isn't purely about luxury. It's a security protocol. After the Itaewon tragedy in October 2022 and the heightened awareness around crowd safety in South Korea, the conversation around idol safety at public venues, especially airports, took on a completely different tone. Companies like Hybe started investing more heavily in private transportation logistics, and for their biggest asset, and let's be real, Jungkook is commercially one of the most valuable idols on the planet, that meant minimizing public exposure during travel. There's also the fascinating detail about Jungkook's personality that plays into this. Despite being the most famous member in terms of raw global search volume and social media engagement, Jungkook is notoriously private about his personal life. He doesn't flaunt wealth. He wore the same black cap and mask combo to airports for years. He's the guy who once said his biggest hobby is just staying home and playing video games. So when he does fly private, it's not about the Instagram story or the flex. It's about getting from one commitment to the next without
without turning an airport into a scene from a disaster movie. That contrast between his astronomical fame and his genuine desire for normalcy is what makes his private jet story so compelling. He didn't choose to fly above the crowds because he thinks he's above them. He does it because the crowds literally won't let him walk among them safely anymore. There's something poetic and kind of heartbreaking about that when you really sit with it. The boy from Busan who used to take the bus to school now has to charter aircraft just to travel in peace. That's the price of being the most searched K-pop idol in history. And yet, even at number 6, Jungkook's private jet narrative is still just the beginning of this story. If the Golden Maknae's situation already feels this intense, what do you think it looks like for the members ranked even higher? Who could possibly have more documented private jet moments than Jungkook? The answers are coming, and trust me, they're going to blow your mind.
Number 5. Jimin, the fashion world's favorite passenger at 30,000 feet. Now we're getting into territory where private jet sightings stop being occasional and start becoming a pattern, and nobody embodies that transition more beautifully than Park Jimin. Here's what you need to understand about Jimin's placement at number 5. This isn't just about a rich idol hopping on planes. This is about a man whose solo career, fashion affiliations, and global brand partnerships have literally required him to exist in multiple countries within the same week. And when your schedule looks like that, commercial aviation stops being an option and starts becoming an obstacle. Let's start with the fashion connection, because that's where Jimin's private jet story truly ignites. When Dior announced Park Jimin as their global ambassador in early 2023, everything changed. This wasn't some casual endorsement deal where you shoot one campaign and call it a day. Being a global ambassador for a house like Dior means attending runway shows in Paris, fitting sessions in Milan, photo shoots in Tokyo, press events in New York, and sometimes all of that within a span of 10 to 14 days. The logistics of moving someone of Jimin's fame through commercial airports across 4 different countries in 2 weeks is a nightmare that no travel coordinator wants to deal with. So what happens? Private aviation becomes the default mode of transport. And the sightings started rolling in almost immediately. During Paris Fashion Week in January 2023, Jimin was photographed arriving at Le Bourget Airport, which is Paris's primary private aviation hub, the same airport where billionaires, heads of state, and A-list Hollywood celebrities land when they don't want to deal with Charles de Gaulle. The images showed Jimin stepping off a private aircraft in a full Dior ensemble, looking like he was born into that world, and the photos absolutely dominated social media for days. Fashion journalists who had covered Paris Fashion Week for decades said they had never seen a single arrival generate that much online engagement. That's the Jimin effect. He doesn't just show up, he creates a cultural event out of a simple airport arrival. But here's what makes Jimin's private jet narrative even more layered. It's not just about fashion. When Jimin released his debut solo album, Face, in March 2023, followed by his second album, Muse, in 2024, his promotional schedule required constant movement between continents. He was filming content in Seoul, doing interviews in Los Angeles, attending events in London, and somehow finding time to squeeze in personal schedules between all of it. Multiple fan tracking accounts documented instances where Jimin was seen at private terminals in both Gimpo and Incheon airports, sometimes departing late at night or arriving in the early morning hours, clearly trying to maximize every single hour of his packed schedule. One particularly memorable moment came when Korean media outlets reported that Jimin used a private charter to fly from Seoul to Osaka for what was believed to be a personal trip, though some speculated it was related to undisclosed work commitments. The interesting thing about that particular sighting was the speed at which it was confirmed. Fans at the private terminal in Osaka's Kansai region spotted him within minutes of landing, proving once again that even private aviation can't guarantee complete invisibility when you're Park Jimin. There's also the Hybe factor that plays a significant role in Jimin's private jet frequency. As one of the company's highest-earning solo artists, Hybe has a vested financial interest in protecting Jimin's schedule, health, and safety.
Private flights reduce the risk of delays that could torpedo carefully planned promotional events worth millions of dollars. When Jimin needs to be on a music show stage in Seoul at 6 p.m. and he was at a Dior event in Paris 30 hours earlier, there's no room for a missed connection at Dubai International or a weather delay at Heathrow. A private charter eliminates those variables entirely, and in the entertainment industry, time is the most expensive commodity that exists. What's genuinely endearing about Jimin, though, is how he handles all of this with an almost childlike wonder. Unlike some celebrities who treat private jets as just another Tuesday, Jimin has been known to express genuine gratitude and even a little disbelief about the life he's living. In interviews and behind-the-scenes content, he's talked about how surreal it feels to go from growing up in Busan, riding buses and trains to dance academy, to now being whisked across continents in private aircraft to sit front row at the most exclusive fashion shows on Earth. That emotional honesty is part of why Army connects with him so deeply. He never lets the luxury disconnect him from his roots, and you can feel that authenticity even when he's stepping off a jet in a custom Dior suit that costs more than most people's cars. There's a moment from a behind-the-scenes vlog where Jimin looked out the window of a plane, it's unclear if it was private or commercial, and just quietly said something about how the clouds look the same no matter where you're flying. And that small, reflective comment tells you everything about who he is beneath the glamour. The private jets are a tool, the Dior campaigns are work, but Park Jimin, at his core, is still that kid from Busan who dances because it makes his soul feel alive. And that duality, the ultra-luxury lifestyle paired with genuine emotional depth, is exactly why he captivates millions. But don't get too comfortable at number 5, because the members above him have private jet stories that go even deeper, even bigger, and even more surprising. Can you guess which member turned private aviation into something that goes beyond fashion and music entirely? Stay right here, because this list is about to shift into a whole new gear.
Number 4. J-Hope, the billion-won smile that travels first class even in the sky. If you've been paying attention to this list, you've noticed a pattern. Every member ranked so far has had a specific reason for their private jet sightings, whether it's security, fashion obligations, or scheduling chaos. But when it comes to Jungkook, better known as J-Hope, the story takes a completely different turn, because this man didn't just stumble into private aviation out of necessity, he embraced it as a reflection of the elite creative life he's built for himself, and he did it with more style and intention than almost anyone in the K-pop industry. Let's set the stage properly. J-Hope is, by virtually every financial analysis available, one of the wealthiest members of BTS in terms of personal investments and real estate holdings. This is the man who purchased a high-rise luxury apartment in Seoul's Trimage complex for nearly 2 billion won, and later bought additional premium property that made headline news across Korean financial media. He's been spotted wearing watches that cost more than apartments in some cities, and he owns one of the most impressive sneaker and fashion collections in the entire entertainment industry. The point is this: J-Hope doesn't just earn money, he understands wealth, and private jet travel fits naturally into the ecosystem of someone who's reached that tier of financial sophistication. The first major wave of J-Hope private jet sightings came during the rollout of his solo album Jack in the Box in 2022, which was a monumental moment because it made him the first BTS member to release a full solo album under the group's new chapter. The promotional campaign for that album was global in scope, and J-Hope's schedule during that period was borderline superhuman. He was headlining Lollapalooza in Chicago, becoming the first South Korean artist to headline a major American music festival, while simultaneously managing press obligations in New York, Los Angeles, and Seoul. The timeline between these events was so compressed that commercial travel simply couldn't accommodate it. Fan accounts tracking celebrity flight movements documented what appeared to be a private charter departing from Midway area private terminals in Chicago shortly after his historic Lollapalooza performance, heading east toward New York for follow-up media appearances. That sighting alone generated massive discussion online, with fans debating whether Hybe had arranged the charter or whether J-Hope had personally booked it. Industry insiders leaned toward the latter, noting that J-Hope had been increasingly managing his own travel logistics separate from company arrangements, a privilege that comes with seniority, financial independence, and the kind of professional autonomy that only a handful of idols in K-pop history have ever achieved. But the Lollapalooza era was just the beginning. When J-Hope began his mandatory military service in April 2023, the months leading up to his enlistment were packed with an almost frantic energy, as if he was trying to compress years of experiences into weeks. During this pre-enlistment period, multiple sources reported J-Hope using private aviation services for personal trips, including what fans believed was a private flight to Japan for undisclosed personal reasons. The sighting at a private terminal in Gimpo was brief but unmistakable. That signature J-Hope energy, the designer outfit, the quiet confidence of a man who knows exactly who he is and where he is going. What's particularly interesting about J-Hope's relationship with private jets is how it connects to his broader philosophy about life and artistry. In numerous interviews and his documentary series, J-Hope has talked openly about the concept of investing in experiences, about how the money he earns is meaningless unless it translates into moments that feed his creativity and his soul. Private jet travel in that context isn't just a convenience, it's a creative tool. When you eliminate the stress of commercial travel, the delays, the crowds, the exhaustion of connecting flights, you arrive at your destination with mental clarity, with energy, with the capacity to create. For someone like J-Hope, whose artistic output depends entirely on his emotional and physical state, that clarity is worth every single won spent on a charter. There's also a social dimension to J-Hope's private jet usage that deserves attention. J-Hope is known for his incredibly tight inner circle, which includes not just the BTS members, but a select group of friends from the entertainment and fashion industries. When these circles overlap, say attending the same event in a different country or meeting up for a creative collaboration, private group charters become the most efficient and private way to travel together. Several unconfirmed but widely circulated reports suggest that J-Hope has co-chartered flights with friends for trips that blend work and leisure, a practice that's extremely common among high-net-worth individuals in the entertainment industry, but rarely discussed openly in the K-pop world due to the culture of modesty that most agencies try to maintain. And here's the detail that really elevates J-Hope's position on this list above the three members below him: consistency. While Taehyung's private jet moments are rare and mysterious, Jungkook's are security-driven, and Jimin's are fashion industry adjacent, J-Hope's sightings span multiple contexts: solo music promotion, personal travel, pre-enlistment activities, social trips, and professional obligations. That breadth of usage indicates someone for whom private aviation has genuinely become a normalized part of life, not an occasional splurge or a company-arranged exception. He's crossed that invisible line where flying private isn't a special event anymore, it's just how he moves through the world. And if you think that's impressive, wait until you hear about the three members above him, because from here on out, we're entering territory where private jet travel isn't just a lifestyle, it's practically a second home. Which member do you think lives at cruising altitude more than on the ground? The answer is closer than you think, and it's about to get very, very interesting.
Number 3. Suga, the underground king who conquered the skies in silence. There's a certain poetic irony in the fact that the member of BTS who once rapped about being so broke he could barely afford bus fare is now ranked number 3 on a list about private jet travel. But that's the Min Yoongi story in a nutshell, a narrative so dramatic, so layered with struggle and triumph that even Hollywood screenwriters would struggle to make it up. Suga, the man who grew up in Daegu delivering newspapers and working part-time jobs just to keep his music dreams alive, the same man who once slept in a recording studio because he couldn't afford proper housing, now moves between continents on private aircraft with the quiet authority of someone who knows exactly what it costs to get here. And that background is precisely what makes his private jet story hit differently than anyone else on this list. Let's talk about the Auguste D World Tour, because that's where Suga's private aviation narrative truly exploded into public consciousness. In 2023, Suga embarked on his first ever solo world tour under his August D alias, performing in cities across Asia, the United States, and Europe. The scale of this tour was enormous. We're talking about venues holding 10,000 to 20,000 people in cities like Seoul, Tokyo, Jakarta, Bangkok, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, London, Paris, and Berlin, among others. The logistics of moving a solo artist plus a full production crew, band members, and management team across that many cities on a tight schedule is a logistical puzzle that would make military strategists sweat. And here's where private aviation became not just useful, but absolutely essential. Multiple confirmed reports and fan documentation placed Suga at private aviation terminals in several cities during the tour. One of the most widely documented instances occurred during the North American leg, where Suga had back-to-back shows in cities that were geographically far apart with minimal rest days between them. Fan accounts near Teterboro Airport, in one of the busiest private jet airports in the world, used regularly by everyone from Wall Street executives to touring musicians, captured images of vehicles matching Suga's tour convoy entering the private terminal area. Similar sightings were reported at Van Nuys Airport in Los Angeles and at private facilities near Chicago's O'Hare complex. The pattern was clear. Suga was using private charters to hop between tour cities, a practice that's actually standard among major touring artists in the West, but was relatively unprecedented for a K-pop solo act at that time. But the August D tour is only part of the story. What really pushes Suga into the number 3 spot is his production work, because here's something that casual fans often overlook. Min Yoongi isn't just a performer, he's one of the most prolific and in-demand music producers in Asia. Under his real name and his various aliases, Suga has produced tracks for artists across multiple genres and multiple countries. That production work requires him to be physically present in studios scattered across Seoul, Tokyo, Los Angeles, and other music industry hubs, often on timelines that don't accommodate the leisurely pace of commercial aviation. Industry sources have indicated that Suga has used private flight services specifically for production-related travel, flying into a city for a concentrated studio session lasting 1 to 2 days before flying back to Seoul for his own commitments. That kind of surgical, purpose-driven travel is the hallmark of someone who treats time as their most valuable asset. And when you consider that Suga has openly talked about his relentless work ethic and his almost obsessive dedication to his craft, it makes perfect sense. Every hour spent in an airport lounge or on a layover is an hour not spent behind a mixing console. And for Yoongi, that equation is simply unacceptable. There's also the health dimension that adds a deeply personal layer to Suga's preference for private travel. Suga has been remarkably transparent about his physical challenges, including the shoulder surgery he underwent in 2020 to repair damage from a car accident he suffered years before debuting. The recovery from that surgery was long and painful, and even after returning to full activity, the physical toll of extended commercial travel, cramped seats, long security lines, heavy carry-on luggage presents genuine discomfort for someone with his medical history. Private aviation eliminates virtually all of those physical stressors, offering spacious seating, door-to-door service, and the ability to rest properly between engagements. It's not a luxury in his case, it's genuinely a health-conscious decision, and anyone who has dealt with chronic pain from a serious injury understands exactly why that matters. Now let's talk about the quieter, more private side of Suga's jet travel, the personal trips that rarely make headlines but are whispered about in fan communities. Suga is famously private about his personal life, even more so than most BTS members, which is saying something. But there have been scattered sightings and unconfirmed reports of Suga using private aviation for personal travel within Asia, particularly flights between Seoul and Japan, where he's known to have close personal connections and a deep appreciation for the culture, food, and music scene. These personal flights are almost impossible to fully verify because Suga is extraordinarily skilled at moving undetected. He's been known to disguise himself so effectively that even dedicated fans standing meters away fail to recognize him. That ability to disappear in plain sight, combined with the inherent privacy of private terminals, means that the sightings we do know about likely represent only a fraction of his actual private flight usage. But what truly sets Suga apart on this list is the philosophical weight behind his journey. Every time Min Yoongi steps onto a private aircraft, there's an unspoken conversation happening between who he was and who he's become. The kid from Daegu who once wrote lyrics about wanting to fly is now literally flying above the clouds, and he carries that contradiction with a grace that's almost spiritual. He doesn't flex about it, he doesn't post about it, he doesn't make it part of his brand. He simply uses it as a tool to protect his time, his health, and his creative energy. And that restrained approach to extraordinary privilege is the most Min Yoongi thing imaginable. But if you think Suga's story is the peak of this list, you haven't seen anything yet. The two members above him don't just fly private, they've turned it into something that redefines what it means to be a global superstar. Ready to find out who they are? Because the top two are about to change everything you thought you knew about BTS and the skies they own.
Number 2. Namjoon, the intellectual nomad who turned the sky into his personal museum. Now we've arrived at the territory where private jet travel stops being a convenience and starts becoming a defining characteristic of how someone exists in the world. And nobody on this entire list embodies that transformation more profoundly than Kim Namjoon. The leader of BTS, the man who spoke at the United Nations, the self-taught English speaker who became the voice of a generation, sits at number 2 on this list for reasons that go far beyond money or fame. Namjoon flies private because the world is literally too small to contain everything he wants to see, learn, and absorb, and commercial aviation simply cannot keep up with the pace of his intellectual hunger. Let's unpack this properly, because Namjoon's private jet story is unlike anything else on this list. While other members fly private primarily for work obligations, security concerns, or logistical necessity, Namjoon has cultivated a travel lifestyle that blends professional commitments with a deeply personal mission to experience art, culture, and nature across every corner of the globe. If you followed his social media, his solo album narratives, or his behind-the-scenes content, you know that Namjoon is someone who visits museums the way other people visit coffee shops, constantly, passionately, and with an almost academic dedication to understanding what he's looking at. He's been photographed at galleries and exhibitions in Seoul, Tokyo, London, Paris, New York, Berlin, Copenhagen, and dozens of other cities, and the frequency with which he appears in these far-flung cultural capitals raises an obvious question. How is he getting there so fast and so often? The answer, increasingly documented by fan sightings and industry reports, is private aviation. The first major cluster of Namjoon private jet sightings coincided with the creation of his solo albums Indigo and Right Place, Wrong Person. During the creative process for these projects, Namjoon was essentially living as a global nomad, drawing inspiration from places and people scattered across multiple continents. He spoke in interviews about traveling to find the right emotional landscape for his music, about needing to physically be in certain environments to capture the feelings he wanted to translate into songs. That kind of artistic process doesn't work on a commercial flight schedule, where you're at the mercy of airline timetables and layover cities. It works when you can decide at 9 in the morning that you need to be in a specific city by evening, make a call, and be airborne within hours. Multiple fan accounts documented Namjoon at private terminals during periods that aligned with his known creative travel, particularly at smaller regional airports in Europe that are primarily used for private and charter aviation. One widely circulated report placed him at an airfield in the south of France during a period when his Instagram stories showed him visiting Provençal landscapes and art installations, the kind of rural off-the-beaten-path locations that don't have convenient commercial flight connections. Getting there efficiently without losing an entire day to trains and connecting flights essentially requires private aviation, and for someone on Namjoon's creative timeline, that efficiency translates directly into artistic output.
But let's not pretend this is purely about art and inspiration, because there's a hard business reality behind Namjoon's placement at number 2. As the leader and primary spokesperson of BTS, Namjoon carries diplomatic and corporate responsibilities that no other member bears to the same degree. He's the one who sat across from world leaders at the United Nations. He's the one who delivered speeches that were broadcast to billions. He's the one whose words are analyzed by media outlets, quoted by politicians, and studied by cultural academics. That level of public responsibility comes with a travel schedule that mirrors more of a senior diplomat than a pop star. When HYBE needs BTS representation in a high-level meeting in New York, when a brand partnership requires face-to-face negotiation in Paris, when a cultural initiative demands the presence of BTS's leader in a city halfway around the world on short notice, it's Namjoon who goes, and increasingly he goes by private charter because the stakes of him arriving late, exhausted, or compromised by a chaotic commercial travel experience are simply too high. There's documented evidence from Korean aviation enthusiast communities, yes, those exist and they are remarkably thorough, that tracked specific charter flight patterns originating from Seoul's Gimpo Airport that correlated precisely with Namjoon's known international appearances. One particularly detailed analysis matched a private flight registration to a charter company known to service entertainment industry clients, departing Seoul on a date that coincided exactly with Namjoon's appearance at an art exhibition opening in London 2 days later. The return flight pattern matched as well. While none of this constitutes absolute proof, charter companies don't publicly disclose passenger manifests, the circumstantial evidence is compelling enough that even skeptics acknowledge the probability is extremely high. What makes Namjoon's private jet narrative truly special, though, is the emotional and philosophical layer that sits underneath all the logistics and sightings. This is a man who has written extensively about the tension between his public life and his inner world, about feeling simultaneously connected to millions of fans and profoundly alone with his thoughts. Private jet travel, in Namjoon's case, seems to serve as a kind of transitional space, a quiet, pressurized cabin above the clouds where he can exist between identities, between RM, the global superstar, and Kim Namjoon, the contemplative introvert who just wants to read philosophy books and look at paintings. In his music, he's described the sensation of being suspended between worlds, of not fully belonging to any single place. And there's something almost literal about that metaphor when you picture him at 39,000 feet, halfway between Seoul and wherever his curiosity is pulling him next. He once posted a photo of clouds from an aircraft window with a caption that simply said, "Between," and fans debated for weeks whether he was being poetic or just tired, but the truth is, probably both, and that's the most Namjoon thing in the world. He exists in the in-between spaces, and private jets have become the physical manifestation of that existential reality. But here's the question that should be burning in your mind right now. If Namjoon, with all his global responsibilities, creative wanderlust, and diplomatic weight, is only number 2 on this list, then who on earth is number 1? Which BTS member has been seen on private jets more frequently than the leader himself? The answer is coming, and I promise you it's going to make everything click into place in a way you never expected.
Number 1. BTS Jin, the worldwide handsome who literally owns the skies. And here we are, the summit, the apex, the absolute pinnacle of this list. And if you're surprised that Kim Seok-jin sits at number 1, then you haven't been paying close enough attention to the quietest power move in the entire history of K-pop. Because while every other member on this list uses private jets as a response to fame, Jin has transformed private aviation into something entirely different. A seamless extension of a lifestyle so effortlessly elite that it makes everything else on this list look like a rehearsal. Let's get one thing straight before we dive in. Jin is not just wealthy. Jin comes from wealth. This is a detail that casual fans often overlook, but that fundamentally changes the context of every private jet sighting associated with his name. Kim Seok-jin's father is a CEO, and his family's business background means that Jin grew up in an environment where private travel, high-end social circles, and corporate-level luxury were not foreign concepts. They were the baseline.
That doesn't diminish his achievements with BTS in any way, but it does explain why Jin navigates the world of private aviation with a naturalness that the other members, many of whom came from modest or working-class backgrounds, had to gradually learn. For Jin, stepping onto a private aircraft doesn't carry the same sense of novelty or disbelief. It's closer to returning to a world he's always had one foot in, and that comfort is visible in every single sighting. Now let's talk about the evidence, because the volume of documented Jin private jet moments is genuinely staggering compared to the other members. The earliest notable sightings go back to BTS's peak touring era, but the real avalanche began after Jin's discharge from military service in June 2024. When Jin completed his 18 months of mandatory military duty, becoming the first BTS member to both enlist and complete service, he emerged into a world that was absolutely ravenous for his presence. Every brand, every show, every event, every country wanted Kim Sek-jin. And the schedule that materialized around his post-military comeback was nothing short of Olympic in its intensity. Within weeks of his discharge, Jin was everywhere. He appeared on major Korean variety shows, launched solo music activities, activated brand partnerships that had been waiting on hold during his service, and began traveling internationally at a pace that made even seasoned entertainment journalists raise their eyebrows. Fan tracking accounts went into overdrive, and what they documented was remarkable. Jin was consistently using private aviation terminals, not occasionally, not for special circumstances, but as his primary mode of international travel. Sightings at Gimpo's private gates, at Inshin's VIP aviation facilities, at private terminals in Tokyo's Haneda Airport, at exclusive airfields serving the Los Angeles entertainment corridor, the reports were coming in faster than fans could compile them. One particularly viral sequence of sightings placed Jin at 3 different countries within a single week, with each arrival and departure documented at private terminals rather than commercial gates. The mathematical reality of that travel pattern makes commercial aviation virtually impossible, confirming what the sightings had already suggested. Jin was flying private with a frequency that surpassed every other BTS member by a significant margin. But it's not just the post-military period that earns Jin the top spot. Let's rewind to some moments that have been overshadowed by other narratives but deserve recognition. In the BTS Chapter 2 era in 2022, when members were transitioning into solo activities, Jin, despite having a shorter pre-enlistment window than some other members, was spotted at private terminals on multiple occasions for both personal and professional travel. His trip to Argentina, where he carried the World Cup trophy at the FIFA ceremony in Qatar. Let's not forget that jaw-dropping moment when the worldwide handsome literally walked onto the pitch at Lusail Stadium in front of billions of viewers, involved travel logistics that, according to multiple reports, included private charter segments. You don't just show up at a FIFA World Cup final carrying the trophy like it's a grocery bag without some serious VIP-level transportation behind the scenes, and Jin's journey to and from that event reportedly involved private flights coordinated at the highest levels. There's also the business dimension that sets Jin apart from the pack. Jin has demonstrated a sophisticated approach to personal business ventures, including his investment in a premium Korean restaurant and his involvement in various entrepreneurial activities that reflect his family's business acumen. These ventures occasionally require travel that is both time-sensitive and confidential, the kind of travel where you can't risk being photographed by fans in a commercial terminal with documents or companions that might reveal unannounced business deals. Private aviation provides that layer of confidentiality, and Jin appears to utilize it strategically for business-related movement in addition to his entertainment schedule. And then there's the social factor, which is perhaps the most underreported aspect of Jin's private jet dominance. Kim Sek-jin is by all accounts one of the most socially connected members of BTS. His friendships span actors, musicians, athletes, business executives, and personalities from virtually every segment of Korean high society. His social calendar alone generates travel needs that a typical commercial schedule can't efficiently accommodate. When your friend group includes some of the most famous faces in Asia and your idea of a weekend plan involves flying to a different country for a dinner reservation at a restaurant that has a 3-month waiting list, private jets stop being a luxury and start being a social utility. And what brings this entire list full circle is the beautiful contradiction at the heart of Jin's story. Here is a man who is arguably the most financially comfortable member of BTS, the one with the deepest roots in privilege, and yet he is also universally regarded as the most generous, the most grounded, and the funniest member of the group. He's the one who cooks ramen for the other members, who makes dad jokes that make million-dollar producers cringe, and who cried on camera because he was going to miss his bandmates during military service. The private jets don't define him, they're just the vehicle, literally, that carries a man who is so much more than the sum of his luxuries. And that's why he's number one, not because he flies the most, but because when he does, it represents the full spectrum of what it means to be Kim Sek-jin, the family legacy, the business mind, the social butterfly, the global entertainer, and underneath all of it, the worldwide handsome with a heart bigger than any aircraft that's ever carried him.
And there you have it. All 7 members of BTS ranked by how frequently they've been spotted soaring through the skies on private jets. From Taehyung's ghost-like stealth at number 7 to Jin's unmatched dominance at number 1, each member's relationship with private aviation tells a story that goes far deeper than luxury or wealth. It's a story about 7 boys from South Korea who had absolutely nothing guaranteed to them, who trained in cramped studios, who shared tiny dorm rooms, who once split a single meal because the budget didn't allow for 7 plates, and who now command the kind of global presence that literally requires private aircraft just to keep their schedules functioning. Think about that for a second. The distance between a rented practice room in Gangnam and the tarmac of a private airfield is not measured in kilometers. It's measured in sacrifices, in sleepless nights, in tears that cameras never captured, in moments of doubt that almost ended the journey before it truly began. Every private jet sighting on this list is a receipt for years of relentless work, and not a single one of these 7 men takes that for granted. But here's the question we want to leave you with. Does flying private change who they are? After everything we've explored today, the answer feels pretty clear. Taehyung is still the mysterious artist. Jungkook is still the humble kid from Busan. Jimin still dances like his life depends on it. J-Hope still lights up every room he enters. Suga still writes music like he's running out of time. Namjoon still chases meaning in every corner of the world. And Jin still makes everyone around him laugh until their stomachs hurt. The jets are just machines. The men inside them, that's where the real story lives. If this list made you see BTS from a different altitude, if it made you appreciate not just the glamour but the grind behind it, then we did our job. Drop your thoughts. Who surprised you the most? Who did you expect to be number 1? And most importantly, if you could fly private with any BTS member, who would you choose and where would you go? Until next time, keep your eyes on the sky, because when it comes to BTS, the only direction they've ever known is up.